I'd like to call the Davidson County Board of Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, June the 9th, to order. And prior to the invocation and pledge, it's my turn, and I'd like to ask for a moment of privilege, if I could. In his epic novel, A Tale of Two Cities, Charles Dickens wrote that in a time of tyranny and revolution, love, redemption, and compassion can be achieved. The writer began with these famous words: "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair." May we bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, in these best of times, we may feel that it is the worst, but we can be a light unto others in order to erase the darkness. Heavenly Father, you are our hope in this winter of despair. You have given us minds to think wisely and hearts to love deeply. We thank you for that and for the daily blessings you pour on us even when we do not deserve them. Help us in these best and worst of times to be good stewards of the provisions you have bestowed. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to excuse Commissioner Yates and Commissioner Elliott.
Okay. I have a motion to excuse. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We'll move on to recognition. I'd like to welcome those department heads that are with us tonight, and also for those that are here for the recognition that follows. I'll turn it over to Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Richard Jones, if you and your staff, please, y'all can make your way up. We've got several members of our transportation department staff here, and I think a lot of folks have seen for the immediate release here. Our transportation department was awarded the North Carolina Transit System of the Year in North Carolina through the Public Transportation Assistance folks. Richard Jones, and this is, I think, majority of the staff, if not all of them. I'm going to let Richard say a few words in the mic, but these folks deserve a great round of applause. They run a great system, and I think at the last meeting we talked about PART a little bit, and one of the reasons we're talking about them is because these folks do such a great job. So I think they need to be commended, and turn it over to Richard to say a few words here.
Thank you for the recognition. We have a great staff, and it's these folks that make my job very easy and made the program successful. So it's really on the backs of all these folks and those who are not with us here tonight. So we're very blessed in this county with a great group of support from y'all and from our county manager's office and these folks and the county residents. We thank you.
Thank y'all so much. We'll give them a round of applause.
You know, I would just like to say that I'm privileged to be on the transportation board with Richard and this group of people. And I see the job they do all the time. They do a great job, and I thank them also.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's okay, we're going to get a picture. May I have them spread out a little bit?
Can we just lean over?
I need to be able to see everyone's face. There we go. 1, 2, 3. Do one more. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thanks, Alex.
Next is the adoption of the agenda. The EDC President, Craig Goodson, has asked that a closed session for economic development to be added to the agenda tonight. And as you take a look, are there any changes?
Chairman, I make a motion that we adopt the agenda with the, addition that you just announced.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
Caught me by surprise.
All of the votes in. And that motion carries by a vote of 5-0.
We're not doing a public address.
Well, we did away with it in I think the first meeting in April. We're only having it at the last meeting until we can have more folks in the room.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to public hearing. We have a rezoning request by Robert Sarvis, Warren Godwin, and Susan Fritz in Cotton Grove Hill Township containing 1.56 acres from HC to RS. I declare the public hearing open. I'll turn it over to Mr. Cornman.
Sure. You do have a request tonight by Robert Sarvis, Warren Godwin, Susan Fritz, to rezone property located in Cotton Grove Township, tax map 34, lot 15, containing 1.56 acres more or less. The property is located on the west side of NC Highway 8, approximately 300 feet south of the Owen Road intersection. The rezoning is requested to change from HC Highway Commercial District to that of RS, Low Intensity Residential District. You see it highlighted in yellow. Joel's kind of showing that for you there. If you're familiar with downtown Tyro, this is just next door to the post office property that's also zoned highway commercial. The property's never been developed commercially. It's actually had a family house, I think, there for about 75 years or more. But at the time that zoning was adopted, apparently that property owner had requested the HC back in '90. And so that's the reason why I probably thought at some time that there may be an extension of commercial development, but it hasn't happened. So they're currently asking for it to be returned back to the RS, and I think they have some plans to try to develop it maybe residentially.
Mr. Sarvis here to explain the request.
Yes, ma'am.
Come on.
So the request is, I plan on living in the house. Mr. Godwin, and Ms. Fritz asked me to come here today just because of the pandemic and everything. So I'm doing that on behalf of them. Plus, I want to buy the place, so it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I do intend to live in the house and fix it up. It's a 1945 house. I mean, it's pretty nice.
Mm-hmm. Are there any questions by the board at this time?
Guy, did you say something about Tyro?
About what?
Tyro.
No, I didn't say anything about Tyro.
I got something in my ears then, that's why I was confused. I thought you said something about Tyro near something.
Downtown Tyro.
Yeah.
I meant Southmont, I'm sorry.
Okay. That was confusing. Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak either in favor of or in opposition to this request? Mr. Sarvis, if you'll just step back.
I'll bring that down for you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
The staff recommendation and the planning board recommendation both correctly cite policies 6.3 and 6.10. The resolution on statement of consistency incorrectly substitutes policy 6.5 for policy 6.10. Policy 6.5 is a policy about manufactured housing. Nothing silences the critics like down zoning, and this is a down zoning like none I have ever seen. The number of uses permitted by right falls from 56 to 17. 2 weeks ago, we had to settle for contiguity that was only almost. Tonight we have an abundance of RS, of existing RS, that touches the proposed RS on two sides. The subject property has had 30 years to demonstrate its commercial potential. It hasn't. That tract remains as resolutely residential as it was before it was zoned. Recognize reality by granting the request.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Do I have anyone that would like to speak in opposition to this request? Mr. Cornman, would you repeat the recommendation?
Sure. Staff went along with the planning board. It was unanimous at the planning board level, but policy 6.3 and 610 do address reasons that support the land development plan for the area, and it's contiguous to RS. So without further ado, we would recommend approval.
Okay. Any other discussion by the board? I declare the public hearing closed. May I have a motion and a second to either approve?
Motion to approve, Madam Chair.
Okay, I have a motion to approve.
What resolution of statement of
No,
consistency?
no, no. Do we want to make the resolution on statement of consistency 6.3 and 6.10 instead of 6.5 and 6.10?
That would be appropriate.
Yes,
Okay.
make those necessary changes and include that in my
I wanted to
motion.
check on that, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a motion to approve. Do I have a
Second.
I've got a second. Please cast your vote.
All of the votes are in. And that motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Sarvis.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. The consent agenda, are there any items to remove from the consent agenda for discussion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I do have a second from Commissioner Truill. We'll do a roll call vote.
We can do this with the
Clicker's okay? All right, all right. Cast your vote. We're to item number 7, deliberation. We're, Mr.
Madam Chair, that last motion carried by a vote of 5-0.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm jumping ahead of myself, getting excited.
Got a record here.
I know, Mr. Smith is going to, discuss the body worn camera purchase request.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask Dwayne Childers. I'm actually going to ask the sheriff and Robert Miller both to come up because we may need everybody up for this one. The sheriff's office has received a grant from the Department of Justice, a federal grant, to pay for half of body camera purchases, which Dwayne's going to walk through in just a minute, the costs and the bids, and I think he may even have a handout. So basically, in a nutshell, we've got the bids here tonight that we've bid per the federal guidelines. You may want to talk with the sheriff more. We may have questions involving the policy and those types of things and the operations of the cameras, so that's why he's here tonight. the cost of this is half the grant and half out of drug money, basically. And then inside the bid proposals, you'll see what the life cycle of these things are supposed to be over, I think over the next, 6-7 years. There'll be warranties up to about 5, I think, but after that, there could be some county funds in. There may not be. We may get another DOJ grant at some point in time. We kind of felt obligated to you to see all of the costs over the life cycle of the replacing the cameras. So without that further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dwayne. And again, the operations part of this, you may want to talk to Sheriff as he's here. So.
Bringing before you request on behalf of the Sheriff's Office for body-worn and car-mounted cameras, in all 96 in total, which would be 80 body-worn cameras, which would be on the police officer, and some 32 then on the cars. As you can see from our recommendation that the low bidder was not recommended, we did not take this position lightly. The reasons for this was we determined the lowest bidder that is responsible, responsive, and moving forward with grants, I need to add one more word to that, and that is compliant, and that is UG compliant. I know this recommendation does just that. For example, through the initial review, Axiom, Digital Ally, ProGuard were rejected because these firms failed to sign one of the sections of UG that was required. Digital Ally failed to provide the required pricing sheet, but instead submitted their own. From this, we, Major Miller, Tim, myself, moved to more granular items within the proposals that were submitted. For example, Island Tech had a very, in our opinion, poor battery life. Custom Signals offered cloud storage but did not record their own fill rate on orders that were shipped.
Do we have this information?
Yeah, I thought that was gonna be furnished to us after, so we.
Maybe the item's not pulling up on that I'm looking at from here to the screen. It's not pulling up on the web.
Yes, I don't have anything.
So we have.
Very sorry, I thought you guys.
No, we haven't seen anything.
It's not pulling up. It won't let you click on anything. I can print copies. If you'll send one to the back there, I'll run 5. Can you print it from there?
I can't because I've got it up on this and I don't have.
I'll do it real fast. Mr. Shell, go ahead. I'll be back with 5 copies. I just saw it myself, where it won't click on the item.
I wondered why you guys kept looking at me, kind of.
Yeah.
When you said, as you can see, I said, well, see where it leads.
I know.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry. We were kind of sitting here,
Yeah,
all
please
of us
stop.
thinking,
Well,
where's this
While
coming
we're
from?
waiting, Madam Chair, can we talk to the sheriff? Is that okay?
Sure. I don't see why.
Good evening, Mr. Sheriff. How
Good
are you?
evening, good to be here.
I know you guys already have a couple of the body cameras. Are these gonna interface with the current ones that you already have?
Same company.
Same company, okay. How many do you have now?
4.
4, okay. I know y'all been playing with them, when I say playing, trying them out. And I know they've already been successful in, one investigation I know of. When we do this, and it's your, the drug forfeiture funds, but can y'all keep a track of, just like that one investigation I'm talking about, the shooting that happened at Sheetz last year? Can y'all keep a track of that when those body cameras are useful? So that way, 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, and we have to replace them, that way you can go in and say to that future board, whoever may be here at that time, like, hey, over the last 5 years, here's how they've saved us from having issues. I mean, that might justify, cost later is what my personal opinion. And I'm assuming that y'all see that, and that's why you want to do it.
I think we get
They speak for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, we've had great success in the past, with, some of the car cameras with WatchGuard. It's been a good company, got our money's worth well used, and when we tried them out, they work extremely well.
It's my understanding you own that you own that, footage. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And is that not also the camera system that the cities are using now?
Everybody in Davidson County
Yeah.
has that company.
Right.
For it to upload the stuff, is it, when they get back to the vehicle, that it uploads to the vehicle, and then when the vehicle passes by one of your towers, it uploads automatically?
We don't have the upload automatically. They'll have to come in and dock it, is what we chose to do.
Okay. Is there a big cost difference in that?
It can get steep.
Okay, all right. Does that same company allow that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's something
Yeah.
we could upgrade to later if you needed
Yeah.
it.
To, Commissioner Shell's comment, WatchGuard is predominant in North Carolina. They were one of the first body camera companies ever. North Carolina Highway Patrol, thousands of troopers, that's who the state uses, is WatchGuard. Everybody in Davidson County uses WatchGuard if this is what we're allowed to go to. So we'll all be interfaced together.
You own the camera, or is it a lease camera?
We own it.
Okay.
Once it's delivered, everything's ours.
And the maintenance agreement is that not only the service provider, but is that the equipment as well that you may have with this company?
1 year only is what we're gonna go to on the equipment. We feel good enough that it'll last, and the reason I say that, Steve, is the four we got them 15 years ago. They're only supposed to be 5-year cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at 10-year mark, they begged us, please change these cameras out because there's new technology out here that we want you to be able to see. We were using the old DVD version.
Mm-hmm.
It went 10 years, it's supposed to be gone in 5. I stand behind their product.
Best teacher.
This may not be about the product, but what are the rules about wearing the cameras? When, and do you wear them all the time? I mean, once you get in the vehicle and you're out on patrol or whatever you're doing, the camera goes on and stays on the entire time until you're off your shift. Is that how it works?
Yeah. That's gonna be 100%.
Okay.
It's gotta be on unless you're going to the restroom, you're eating lunch, dinner, something like that.
Okay.
But
I was just curious.
I'll tell you some features with WatchGuard. Even though it ain't on, one thing that they hold that no other camera company has is if you let me know within 12 hours, even though it wasn't turned on, it was recorded. Has been gracious for law enforcement.
Wow.
Is there a constant monitor of the system? What I'm getting at is if an officer were to be attacked or shot, and he goes down and he can't communicate, is there someone like 911 or your office that monitors an officer's camera?
You
or
could have it set up with your software. We're not gonna set that up because of our radios. We'll monitor through 911. He's got his emergency button on his radio, but you could do an emergency relay in any of the camera systems, to pinpoint where they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, geographically find them in their car or their body. You could do that.
Yeah. I just,
So the cost.
it's painful to think about an officer laying on the side of the road and, you know, I want somebody to know where this guy's at, you know, and what's going on. He's not responding, and I'm sure you guys do too.
And the emergency button with our communications on a radio works tremendously well. Kind of a duplicate process that we didn't feel the need to go with.
Do you have GPS trackers on all the vehicles? Have you ever thought about doing that so that way if a vehicle's sitting still for, like, let's say it's sitting at a stop sign and it's sitting there for so many minutes, that way 911 knows to radio that deputy and say, hey, are you okay?
We've tested Verizon's. We've allowed, I think, 6 of our cars. The garage had a test from, I think it's Verizon, and we put them on just to run a test. We haven't really considered any further than that test.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like Commissioner Shell. I wanna make sure our deputies are safe, and I know y'all do too. It just scares me that, you know, sometimes they're out in one deputy in a zone by themselves, and then something happened that, you know, nobody knows until it's too late. Thank God that has not happened in Davidson County, and I hope and pray it doesn't. But I was just asking, you know, if that's something y'all had looked up.
Madam Chair, if I can, real quick, just so you got some handouts there, let me catch everybody up, because sorry, this item, it just didn't pull, it's got the attachments in there, I don't know, buggy part of the system. You've got the bids there in front of you, and you've got the agenda item in which Tim, out of my office, did a really good job of taking those bids, and factoring out the grant, so you can kind of see, you know, you remember you got 3, I think, out of 6, if I'm doing this from memory, because I can't see the item either, that were, as Dwayne said, not responsive. They did not fill out the complete application, or they did not respond in the correct manner. So of the 3 that were remaining, you see Tim did you some math there where you pull out the grants and you can see more apples to apples cost. We had one vendor that gave us extra information, if you will. You got the regular bids there behind that, and then Tim's going to email a copy of the policy. It's 14 pages long, so I didn't want to print that one out as well. We can just send it out.
And
The
he
policy-
just sent that.
The policy in a nutshell, and Sheriff, you jump in any time. Sorry, I don't mean to tread on your stuff here. The sheriff is going to be the arbiter of the data, the hardware, those kinds of things. I do think the county attorney plays a role if there's ever a request for video stuff that you feel like he needs to see to provide a recommendation to you all. So I'm not saying that's all the policy has. I know those are the 2 biggies in terms of questions people would ask. And I think they probably have already told you, Thomasville and Lexington, I believe, both use the vendor that's being requested. So some of that's just good, useful bullet point information. I know if you've got any more detailed questions, these folks are here. But sorry this item didn't print out correctly.
I see a total cost of almost $500,000, but then over here we're asking for $244,000.
We only got to buy that first part up front, the 2 numbers at the top. What you're staring at is a life cycle over the whole replacement of everything.
Okay.
We wanted you to see the whole picture, not just the $244 that's being asked to be appropriated tonight. $244, and I can't remember the exact number. It's an exact number, $244.32, I believe. But it's basically half coming from DOJ at $122, and the other half coming from federal forfeiture funds or drug money. That'll get you through now, the initial purchase of the equipment, all 96 cameras, including the car cameras, et cetera. What you're seeing there is what's going to happen potentially out in the future after we have to replace them again. And again, we may get a DOJ grant to do that in the future, but in case we don't, I want you to see what it's going to cost.
I love it. Do we have enough drug forfeiture money now to?
Yes, the balance of that, and Tim's here, he probably has it off the top of his mind. It may be in the item quoted there is what the remaining balance of federal forfeiture funds are. But yes, there is enough for the 122.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve this.
I second that.
Got a motion and a second to approve this request?
You'll do the
Castor?
clicker.
Yes, use your clicker.
All of the votes are in. And that motion carries 5-0.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dwayne. May I have a motion and second to go into closed session?
So moved.
Have a motion, second? I've got a second. Vote
Okay.
verbally, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you, Casey, for getting this.
Yes, sir. Sorry it didn't.
Thank you.
It's all right.
I was kind of wondering why y'all were looking at me too.
We were kinda looking, kinda funny at you, weren't we?
Dwayne said, as you can see,
So moved.
Return.
All in favor, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Let's vote verbally. Get a second? If we get a second, I don't. Thank you. Mr. Farrell, will you give us a report on closed session?
Yes, in closed session, the board, received a report from Mr. Goodson with regard to a proposed economic development project. Madam Chair, it may be appropriate at this point for the board to consider amending the agenda to consider a request for a call for a public hearing.
Okay, may I have a motion and a second to amend the agenda, call for a public hearing?
Motion.
I'll take first, second. Which one am I doing?
Want to vote verbally on that one, Debbie?
Yes, please, ma'am.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So, Jack, will call for public hearing for project.
Thank you very much. Project H is an existing industry in Davis County, and they are working on a project that they hope to be able to begin soon, and they have asked us to consider an incentive for them that will be partly for building expansion and equipment. Right now, there's some interesting things going on with how we're calculating what the taxable value would be for the investment that they're gonna be making. But the investment, probably subject to incentive, will be a minimum of $6 million and probably not to exceed $8.8 million. The company is also gonna be creating a minimum of 40 jobs, and those jobs will pay a wage between $38,000 and $54,000 a year. So the EDC is requesting that we schedule a public hearing at the next meeting of the commissioners to consider this proposal.
So may I have a motion and a second to schedule this public hearing from Project H for Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020 at 6 p.m.?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, please vote verbally. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. May I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?